If you ever have a friend coming over to fly together using Flight Simulator on an online flying network like VATSIM, I can tell you that's great fun. It really allows you to create a true multi-crew experience where one pilot is flying and where the other pilot is communicating with air traffic control. And later on, of course, you can switch these roles. It's great fun. But in order to do this realistically, you kind of need, two headsets. You both want to be able to, hear the air traffic control, and preferably also want to both be able to transmit to air traffic control separately. And I'm going to show you in this video exactly how to do this. So I'm using two USB headsets, and I would recommend to you to do that as well. Maybe your friend can bring one over. And I'm using a program called Voicemeeter Banana in order to combine the audio and to make this work, to create a virtual intercom just like in a real aircraft. But because in a real aircraft, both pilots can hear each other talking, both pilots can also transmit separately to air traffic control, and you can also hear yourself. So there are a couple of things that I want to achieve in this video. So the first thing I want to achieve is to be able to hear myself. Then the second thing I want to achieve is to be able to hear the other pilots. And the third thing I want to be able to achieve is so that we both can hear air traffic control talking. And then the last thing I want to achieve is that we are both able to transmit on the VATSIM network separately, so that not two microphones are active at the same time. So there's a link in the description to get Voicemeeter Banana, and let's go and take a look at how this works and how to achieve this.
Alright guys, so I've put a link in the description to get Voicemeeter, Voicemeeter Banana, and once you install this, you will be able to find the program in Program Files x86, VB, and then in Voicemeeter. And what you'll find here is two programs, Voicemeeter, the normal simple version, and Voicemeeter Pro. And what you want to do is open up Voicemeeter Pro. And I would advise to run it as administrator just to prevent trouble, so it's always running as administrator. So make sure you click that and open it up. And once you've opened it up, it will take a few seconds to load the sound engine, because it comes with its own sound engine, and you might want to restart your PC as well just to be sure. Make sure everything is configured once you've installed it. And then we're going to configure, first of all, the devices that we're going to use to create this virtual intercom. So I'm using two headsets that I'm going to create this intercom with. And what you first want to select is the microphone. So hardware input 1 is going to be your first headset. So that's here, the Jabra UC voice. And you can use different modes here. As you can see, I would advise to use WDM mode here. So that's the left headset for the captain. And then the right headset, the microphone of the right headset for the captain, or for the first officer, is the second UC voice headset. So there we go. Both microphones are selected. So once I talk in microphone 1 right now, as you can see, it goes up. And once I talk in the right microphone, as you can see, the level goes up as well. So that works. Then you want to select the hardware output. So that's the speakers of the headsets. It's very simple. Device A1, you just select your left headset, and I would use kernel streaming if you can. You can also use WDM, but for me, kernel streaming provides the best results. I would not use MME, just use kernel streaming if you can. So that's the left headset speakers, and then device A2 is going to be the right headset speakers, also kernel streaming. Now there are a few other options that you can set here in this program. By going to menu and then system settings and options, and here you can select the sample rate. Now the sample rate basically determines how much echo you're gonna hear, but the lower the sample rate, the more likely your computer is gonna have trouble to keep up with repeating the audio to the other headset, and the more choppy the audio may sound. For me, using kernel streaming at 128 samples, which is the lowest possible sample rate, provides good results, but I would leave it at default first and kind of experiment with these values also for the WDM. For me, the WDM only works best at 512 samples, so just be aware of these settings that you can adjust them, but don't put them too low, otherwise you're really going to have trouble with your audio. So you will hear a slight echo, but the lower the sample rate, the better. So 128 at kernel streaming for me provides the best results. So now everything is set up, we can start configuring the actual intercom. So the first thing we want to achieve is to be able to hear yourself. This also what happens in real-world cockpits, whenever you're having a noise-canceling headset especially, you'll be able to hear your own voice through your headset. So you can do it through Voicemeeter, but I would recommend to go to the Windows setting instead, because using this method you will have barely any latency. So what you could do is right click right here to playback devices, and then you have your headset. This is the second headset. Go to properties and then to levels, and here you usually have a side tone or a microphone level. So I would increase this to 100 so that you will be able to hear yourself. And using this method I barely have any latency. It's very not noticeable. So especially when you're talking yourself, you want to have no latency. When your friend is talking, having a little latency is not really a problem, but when you're talking yourself, you really don't want to hear your own voice with an echo. So I would recommend to use this feature instead. And also for the second headset right here, we can do the same thing. So levels, and the side tone or microphone level is set to 100. So now I will be able to hear myself through my own headset without any latency basically. So hit apply and OK, and make sure that it's set. If you want to do it through Voicemeeter, that's also possible, and that's actually pretty simple. So you just want the microphone of headset 1 to go to the speakers of headset 1. So you just select A1. So now the microphone is going to go to A1, and you will be able to hear yourself. And you can also see that here, once I talk in a microphone right here, the left microphone, it also goes to A1. The A1 sound level goes up, as you can see. So that works. Same for the other pilot. If he wants to be able to hear yourself, just going to select A2. So that's going to move the sound of microphone 2 to device A2 selected here. And as you can see, that's indeed correct. Once I start talking, the level of A2 goes up as well. So that works. Do keep in mind that when you're using the Voicemeeter method that you do reduce the side tone right here in the Windows settings. Otherwise you of course will hear yourself double. So it's either this or the Voicemeeter. So I'm just gonna select the side tone off right here, just for demonstration purposes. So I don't need that right now. Okay. So the second thing we want to achieve is to be able to hear each other. And again, this is pretty simple. You just want to go to microphone of headset 1 to go to headset 2. So just select A2. So right now, if I talk in microphone 1, as you can see, the level of A2 goes up. And the same for microphone 2. You want that to go to headset 1. So I'm just going to select A1. So right now, I will be able to hear myself talking through the microphone, and I will be able to hear the first officer talking through the microphone. Okay, pretty simple, right? Now the next thing we want to do is we both want to be able to hear air traffic control. That's also what happens in the real world, right? You both want to be able to hear what's going on the frequency, even if you're only the pilot flying. Now that's pretty simple as well. What we'll do in a minute in my pilot client to connect to the VATSIM network, which is vPilot, I will be able to select this device, Voicemeeter VAIO, as the speaker device. And what this does is it will just play the air traffic control audio to this device. And what we want to do then is just play this audio to A1 and A2, just like with the microphones. It's very simple. So what will happen now when ATC sounds is coming up and when air traffic control starts talking, it will go through this Voicemeeter VAIO device, and that will play back to device A1 and to device A2. So we're now both able to hear air traffic control. So as you can see, that's pretty simple. And I'll go in vPilot in a minute to show you exactly how it works and give you a bit of a summary of what's going on. Now the last thing we want to do is we both want to be able to transmit, but we want to do that separately. Of course, you can imagine that when one pilot is pushing their push to talk button, you don't want the other pilot's microphone to be active as well. You want only one microphone to be active. Otherwise, it's likely that the air traffic controller will hear some kind of echo, especially when you're sitting close to each other. Now, in the aircraft, it probably just, it cancels the other microphone out in some way. I'm not sure how it technically works, but what we're going to do here is we're going to simply mute the other microphone while the one pilot is pushing their push to talk button. So basically, when the captain is pushing the push to talk button, it's gonna mute the microphone of the second pilot. All right. So yeah, in that way we kind of simulate this, and it works very well actually. All right. So how we're gonna do this? First of all, you want to both be able to transmit. So without muting first, I'll just show you. So you want the microphone of headset 1 to go to B1, and B1 is a virtual output that we're going to select as microphone in vPilot in a moment. And the same for the first officer, the right headset, also want to play that to B1. So right now both microphones will be able to transmit on the VATSIM network basically. Now the next thing is a little bit tricky. You need to mute the pilot's microphone while the other pilot is talking. Okay, so what you want to do is go to the Voicemeeter program folder again, and you have here Voicemeeter macro buttons, and you want to be running this as administrator as well to make sure it works well when you're inside the sim. Otherwise the buttons might not work. So let's run that, and as you can see, I've already set it up. You can also go to the menu here and make sure it always starts when a Voicemeeter is starting. But first you have to select to run it as administrator, otherwise it won't work when you're inside the sim. So with the macro button program that comes with Voicemeeter, you can control functions within the Voicemeeter program using keyboard keys. And I'm just going to open one of the buttons right here that I've already configured just by right clicking on one of these squares. And here we have the button that will mute the first officer while the captain is talking. Okay, and that's what you want to achieve. So I'm just going to take you through it. You can give it a name. So it's push to mute for the captain. And what this will do, the captain will mute the first officer. So what you want to select here as button type is push button. And then you can assign a keyboard shortcut. So for me, that's Ctrl+L. And what I'm going to show you in a minute is how to assign two functions to one button, because when you run vPilot, you can only assign one push to talk key. So you need to assign another keyboard key to your push to talk button on your joystick in order to both transmit on the VATSIM network and to mute the other pilots. So I'm just going to show you how that works in a minute. But just for now, I'm just have selected a keyboard shortcut. And then right here we have a little bit of code that you can put in. So request for button on. So when you push the button, what this will do, strip 1, and that's this one, will be muted. And when you release the button, strip 1, which is the first officer's microphone again, will be unmuted, and that's what you want to achieve. So that's all you have to do. So you can hit OK, and once I press Ctrl+L right now, as you can see, the microphone of the second officer or the first officer of the second pilot gets muted. Okay, and this is what you want to achieve, so that once you push that joystick button, that the other pilot is muted. Same for the first officer. So this is the push to mute function of the first officer. And the first officer will now mute the captain. So again, the push button, then we select a different keyboard shortcut, so Ctrl+R in this case. And what this will do, it will mute strip 0 upon the button push. So strip 0 is the first audio strip right here, which is the microphone of the captain. And once you release the button, strip 0 will not be muted. Okay, so again, very simple. Hit OK. And save that macro button. So when I now press Ctrl+R, the microphone of the captain gets muted, and when I press Ctrl+L, the microphone of the first officer gets muted. All right, so that's the way that works. So the next thing you need to do is, this is going to be a little bit difficult. It really depends on in what situation you're using this. But if you're having, if you're flying on VATSIM and using Microsoft Flight Simulator or something like Prepared, you can just use the FSUIPC module to assign buttons. And there's an option to assign multiple buttons. If you don't have this option, if you don't use Microsoft Flight Simulator, or you're using this for any other game or maybe another simulator that doesn't have this module, then you can use something like another macro button program to assign somehow two functions to one button on your joystick. I'm sure you'll be able to find that out. So I'm just going to show how this works using FSUIPC. Now, it's pretty simple. What you want to achieve here is you want to have one button with two functions, basically. So one function is to transmit on the VATSIM, and one button is to mute the other pilot while you're talking. Okay. So in this case, in FSUIPC, within the program itself, you can only assign one keyboard key to a button, but then you have to go and open the FSUIPC ini file, the configuration file, in order to manually add the other function. So what I would recommend is to go into FSUIPC, and then you assign your favorite push-to-talk button on your joystick to a key like scroll lock for transmission, and then you open up this ini file, and then you will remove that button and assign Ctrl+L to that button, so you can see what code you need right here. All right, so I've done the same. So I've assigned scroll lock to this joystick button and Ctrl+R to this joystick button. So you just need to make sure that button 1 of joystick R4 sends out scroll lock, which is this code, and Ctrl+R, which is this code. You can just copy that if you want to as well from my, from what I have in the description, as long as this button right here has both function in it. Same for the other pilots. So for the captain, this key is a little bit up right here. Once that pilot presses our joystick R0 button 1, it sends out the scroll lock key function. But at the same time, the same joystick and the same button will also send out the Ctrl+L button. So whenever I push the push-to-talk button on the captain side, it will send out scroll lock right here, and it will send out Ctrl+L right here. And whenever the first officer pushes the button, it will send out scroll lock and Ctrl+R. Okay, and that's the buttons that we set in the macro button Voicemeeter. So in the description, I've given a little description of how to achieve this and what to enter. Just make sure you just try it out and assign different functions to your buttons. So make sure that works. All right. So I'm now going to open up vPilot to see what the settings in there should be. So when you've opened up vPilot, you can go to Settings and then to Audio tab. And what you want to select here then is your microphone device. So because we're flying with two pilots, let's say a hypothetical situation, what you want to select here is Voicemeeter output. Okay, so that's this one, not the aux one, the first one, Voicemeeter output. Then for output device, you want to select also the wave, but then the Voicemeeter input. Okay, and hit apply, and then you can click OK. So it may look a little bit counterintuitive when you view it this way, but I'm just gonna quickly summarize how this works. All right. So first of all, the Voicemeeter output. So what that is, it's this thing right here. So that's the B1 line. All right. So microphone 1 goes to B1, and microphone 2 goes to B1, and that's this virtual output right here. All right. So that's what we also selected here. So this is kind of the microphone that is now mixed and contains two microphones right here. All right. And then the output device, that is this one, Voicemeeter input. So what will happen now, all the audio of vPilot, the ATC audio, is played to this input device right here, and Voicemeeter will make sure that it arrives at device A1, which is headset 1, and A2, which is headset 2. Okay, so that's how that works. And yeah, basically this is the entire setup. As you can see, it might be a little bit complicated. I hope it was clear enough for you. Especially the push-to-talk button might take a little thinking to set up. But there's, again, in the description, a little note on how to do this and how to do this within FSUIPC. But I hope the principle is clear. So when the captain is talking right now, and he pushes his push the talk button, what will happen is we'll send scroll lock, and I've set it as push the talk key right here, scroll lock. And what happens at the same time, Control L will be pushed so that the first officer is muted while the captain is talking. Same thing happens with the first officer. He also has a button on his or her joystick, or whatever, maybe you have some kind of extra button available on your throttle quadrant. And when they press that button, also scroll lock will be sent and Control plus R will be sent, so the captain gets muted. And this is all set up also in vPilot. So guys, I hope this was clear and that you liked this video. So I really enjoy a lot to fly like this with two headsets. It really creates a realistic environment. And at first it might be a little getting used to, but this is a really cheap option. All you have to have is two USB headsets, and you don't need fancy noise cancelling stuff or headsets which with separate audio mixers. You can just do this for free, and I think it works very well. So I'd like to thank you for watching this video here on the Aviation Pro channel. Make sure you check out some of my other videos, and if you like this video, make sure you check out my Patreon page if you want to support the Aviation Pro channel, because your support is very much appreciated. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.